He's politically incorrect.
If 2020 made clear one single thing, it is this. There is absolutely no freedom in the United States of America.
But he knows a ton about motorcycles, and especially the Honda Goldwing, and
you, Amazon.
he just happens to be my guest for a special two-part series of Garage Talk.
Welcome to another episode of Garage Talk, the podcast for motorcycle enthusiasts with your host, Cruiseman. Today's episode is sponsored by Cruiseman's Garage Honda Goldwing Maintenance Videos, a collection of more than 80 videos that show you how to maintain your own Honda Goldwing. Today's episode starts now.
So welcome to another Garage Talk. Today I'm going to visit with somebody who doesn't really need an introduction, especially in the Goldwing world, and that is Max McAllister, the owner, president, CEO, and if he's like me, he's probably the janitor too, Traxxion Dynamics. So Max, welcome to Garage Talk.
Oh, glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Obviously, you know, we're gonna cover a lot of stuff, so there's no telling where this is going to go. I have a feeling I'm going to have to do a lot of editing and bleeping out by the time we get done, but that's okay. For those of you that don't know, check out his website, Traxxion. I think it's now Traxxion.com. Oh, it has, okay. I thought maybe it was Traxxion Dynamics.
Long time ago, I went to great lengths to trademark the root word Traxxion. It took me 2 years, so it was instead of just Dynamics, because people associated that just the root word with our company. So I wanted that to be
right.
Really,
and I'll put it on the screen, but it's also, there's 2 X's in Traxxion, just so everybody knows, because I think there's another company that's just Traxion. Is that correct?
There's people that use variants of it for different things, but none in the motorcycle industry.
Well, and also Max has a YouTube channel, which is growing pretty rapidly, and it's at Traxxion. So we'll put links in the description of the video, and make sure you check out his YouTube channel, because he's got some very entertaining YouTube videos. One in particular that he just posted recently, we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But you are in Woodstock, Georgia. Is that correct?
Always have been. Founded here, and we're still in the same, within a mile or two of where I started at home, actually, for several years.
Well, tell me how you got into motorcycles. I'm just curious. How did that all get started?
It actually probably just started with, and I was always fiddly by nature, and my father was an electrician. And believe it or not, the very first thoughts, dreams I never got to have, I really wanted a typical mini bike, you would call it, from the 70s with the little gasoline engine. And my joke is I was born, I wasn't just born an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur since I was an embryo. And to tie those two things together, I knew there was no way. It was like $175 for a mini bike in the Sears catalog. If you're our age group, you shopped for Christmas, was hours and hours and hours in the Sears catalog plotting what you'd want. And I knew I would never come up with that kind of money. I couldn't figure that out. But what I did see is you could buy like the seat for $10 and the grips for $3 and the handlebars for $8. So, you know, I slowly theorized if I could, you know, with various gifts and Christmases and odd jobs, I could buy it a piece at a time, and I'd get it to where it was a rolling chassis so I could at least roll it down a hill, and then someday maybe buy the engine. You know, that's how my mind worked when I was like 6 years old. Was I can't buy this, but I'm going to find a way to piece it together, kind of thing. But then at around 14 or 15, I had a moped or two, and I enjoyed fiddling with them, and I took a job, in my first job in the motorcycle business, at a motorcycle dealership. I was living in Salem, Massachusetts at the time, and I took a job in Beverly, the next town north, at a big shop called Cycles 128. And my very first job was assembling new motorcycles out of crates. I did that and became proficient at that. And then the next step was to move into the service department, doing pre-delivery inspections, preparing the new units and actually cleaning them, test driving them, fueling them, making sure all the everything works as intended before they're delivered to the customer. And then after that, you'll actually start working on motorcycles, tires, and oil and carburetors and things like that. So I did, a good chunk of my life as a motorcycle mechanic. I think I started Traxxion Dynamics in 1998. So from about 1982 or 3 till that time, I was a regular motorcycle mechanic. Wow. And
I guess somehow you got into suspension?
I did. So I was working at a motorcycle road racing shop here in Atlanta called Marietta Motorsports at the time. The owner at the time, this is the advent of the internet, and he came up with this idea to have like one of the first racing accessory internet websites. And this was really crude, very early. So he started buying kind of bulk merchandise things that would suit racers, and he had a website. But what we did was we built a big trailer, like a 40-foot trailer, and we outfitted it like a store. And we would go to the racetracks on the weekends and open up this giant store and literally just sell the same stuff. So what I did was I built these multi-tiered rolling carts. They're just gray metal carts, but I welded wheels to them and stuff. And I organized all the merchandise into these carts. And so effectively we packed it all into this trailer. When we got somewhere, we opened up the giant side awning, we rolled the carts out, and it was kind of like walking around in a store. And then when we got back to the building on Sunday night, on Monday morning, we opened the trailer at the building, wheeled the carts right into the building, and then the store was in the building. So we just went on and on with this for a while. I wanted to make more money, and I was captive at the racetrack. Right. I was stuck there effectively all weekend, basically every weekend. So I said, at night, I see this need for people that need help with their suspension. So of my own time and money, I bought a plane ticket. I went to California to attend a couple of classes at this company called Race Tech. By a guy named Paul Feed teaches, suspension basics and stuff. I took those classes, and this is suspension upgrading. So I'd worked on forks for 20 years, already. But I learned more about shocks and this kind of stuff. I came back and I kind of made a deal with the owner. I'm like, so look, you buy the parts, we stock them here. You at night, I'll work on suspension. If we sell parts, you get the money off that, and I get all the labor. It's my little side thing. So that seemed agreeable to him, but it only took a couple of months, and for some reason, he just became uncomfortable with it. And after a record weekend at the track, he just fired me. And the next day, I started Traxxion Dynamics.
Was this mostly road racing like suspension? Not
road
motocross.
Racing? Yeah.
Okay.
Road racing? No, not at all. Yeah, and we've made very consciously always just stayed away from motocross. And there's a big difference between street going riders and motocross riders and or suspension.
So how did that translate to the Goldwing? Because when I met you the first time, I had a 2007 Goldwing. Actually, I had a 2005, but I had ridden a BMW that I rented down in Rio. And my first takeaway was, God, I can't believe how much better the suspension is on this bike than on my Goldwing. And I guess I started doing some research. And then when I bought my 2007 Goldwing, I came across your company and that you were redoing Goldwing suspension. I rode the bike out to Woodstock and you guys rebuilt the front suspension and the rear. How did you get from sport bikes to Goldwings?
It's an interesting tale, but one of them is the kind of the sad part, or if you want to call it that. In racing, I really created this monster where I built my business literally trackside, and that kernel of working at Marietta Motorsports, I took that and made it bigger for my suspension company. So I got it to where I had a super tall 40-foot long trailer that was my entire suspension shop. And when I came home, I parked it, plugged it in the wall. When I was gone 26 weekends a year, it was my whole business. And I created this monster that was trackside service. It really never existed. No one went and truly set up and helped privateer racers win races. That's how we grew. But the problem with it is, you kind of, a guy will buy a forks and shocks, and the average privateer will race the same bike for 2 years. So the next 2 years, I'm there basically supporting one shock and one pair of forks for free. And then literally every racer, we call it the racer handshake, where they turn around and go, this is the racer handshake. I'm going to, if you sponsor me, I'm going to bring you so much business. Nobody promote you more than me. I'll put your sticker on my thing. And, in 25 years of that, I can name the 2 or 3 guys that actually sent me customers, and none of them were a big team or a big truck or an 18-wheeler. All that was just sort of for bragging rights. And so it wasn't really profitable to be in racing. And the broader, more profitable stuff was helping a street guy who you fix his bike up once and then he's thrilled with it. He's not calling you every Saturday and Sunday looking for tuning suggestions for a different road he's riding on. And then he only comes back when he needs service. It's much more profitable. And, racers can be type A, triple negative people to deal with. There's the people who are that, are just can be that exact way to deal with as well. So this all started with the Pirelli North America road racing tire manager contacted me and said, hey, we got these guys. It's not racing. It's these Goldwings. And I'm like, yeah, well, I know something about Goldwings. And then he said, well, look, there's guys who say that it's got this wobble to it. And some people say it's our tire, and some people say it's. He said, I don't think it's the tires. He said, will you look at one of these things and see if you can figure out what makes it wobble? And so we found a volunteer, and they came in, and we took the bike, and then we developed a fork and a shock kit and such. And then through time, that tire thing, just through our volume of experience, it just became evident. I call it this little circle of, the guy who had Dunlop tires who changed to Pirelli or Metzler, and then his bike started wobbling. But then there's a Metzler guy who put on Avons, and then his bike started wobbling. And then there's the guy who had Avons who put on Michelins, and his bike started wobbling. You go all the way back around to I have a guy I was on Michelins, and I put on Dunlops, and my bike started wobbling. The key element is every one of those brands of tires will make the bike wobble if you have a defective front tire. And it's so random. And we really nailed this down at Wingding. One of the first years when we set up a huge display, we had this problem occur at Wingding. The guy walked off with his front wheel and he was a Dunlop guy, had a brand new Dunlop tire put on. My bike didn't wobble. He comes over, he spends $3,000. We put him on his bike wobbles. And he's like, my bike didn't wobble. And I spent 2 days that weekend going through everything this guy's bike, and we took all the wheels off my bike and put it on his bike, and I put my wheels on his bike and it didn't wobble. Okay, so we've got a problem. Then we had to figure out, is it the wheel or the tire? It's a brand new tire. Okay, well, how could a brand new tire be bad? And it came down to the tire was bad. And we went to Dunlop. Dunlop's like, well, you rode it. We can't take it back. And we said, well, I'll buy another one. But if I you put another tire on this bike and it stops wobbling, you're taking this tire, right, back with you. So we put another tire on, put it on the bike. Bike was perfect, no trouble at all. You can put 9 Dunlop tires on your bike, and the 10th one will cause that symptom. And so it would happen where a guy would just by chance change brands because he wanted to try another brand, Or this was the other thing. He might ride that tire a while, right? And it starts getting cupped and messed up because the suspension is bad, which we all, or I'm, don't ask me about how bad it is because I'm convinced it's awful. But, the tire gets cupped up and then that exacerbates wobbling. Maybe he has 10 or 15,000 miles on it. The steering head bearings aren't as tight. Little factors all add up. And so now this guy's bike wobbles. So he takes that used Dunlop off and puts on a brand new Avon. Oh, magically my bike's cured. No, it's because not because you put on Avons, it's because you had a worn out cup Dunlop that you took off. So this crazy pattern of switching brands and tires, really, it just has people lost in a myriad of internet postings and such. And but a lot of it, really, the root is at the the steering head bearing and the suspension. Springs being inadequate being the real root cause. The bike ride's so close to being bottomed out all the time that anything it hits in the road will upset it.
Now, is that fifth generation, sixth generation, or both?
Yeah, the 1 to 17 with the infamous death wobble, which you will see us in a hysterical parody on that coming from me quite soon. It's just called the infamous death wobble, right?
I don't know if I can take another one.
And everybody's been begging for a class action lawsuit, so I'm going to act out a class action lawsuit. It's going to be hysterical. No one has ever died. No one has ever crashed. No one has ever experienced any damage to their motorcycle. No one has experienced one single penny of property damage as a result of the death wobble. Okay, so Honda's not going to recall it. They never have. They never will. All you do is the lawyers walk in the courtroom and go, when my client releases all control of his motorcycle, it exhibits this behavior that's undesirable. Well, what do you do to stop it? Well, if you put one fingertip back on the handlebar, it stops.
Right.
Okay. What page of the Honda owner's manual do they describe this testing procedure where you take your hands off, you go 50 miles an hour, take your hands off, and then wait for it to decel past 40 and then see what it does? Show me the page in the factory service manual. This is how you check your bike. 14, 20, 15 page long threads of the class action lawsuit. We're going to get our money back from Honda. Sorry, it's just good luck. Just keep losing that sleep, But on the new bike, the 18 plus, they do not do that, period. If they do, there's only been a couple I've heard of. And that's because the big main bearing on the tuning fork has come loose. That's analogous to the steering head on every other motorcycle in the world. And maybe those races weren't seated properly or for whatever reason, but that is uber rare.
I know that the guys that are aggressive riders, and there's a lot of them, especially since it's a sportier bike, can benefit from what you do on the 2018 Plus. So tell us what does your suspension for the 2018 Plus look like? How does it improve the things?
So it's literally in philosophy applied to exactly how we made a 2001 to 17 bike work. And in fact, the rear shock is interchangeable practically. The only difference is how they mounted it at the bottom. It uses an eyelet instead of a clevis. But that shock, for fit, form, function, the leverage ratio, all of it is basically unaltered from Honda. Just kept that the way it was. And even the little bit of humor, the whole assembly, the mechanism that does the remote preload adjustment on the shock spring, that whole mechanism, which is an electric motor on a oil pump, that pumps down to a slave cylinder and puts more or less pressure up and down on the spring, that's the same pieces.
Really?
From 2001, your 2024 bike has the exact same parts on it that a 2001 Goldwing had. The wiring loom that connects it to the motorcycle on the 2001 to 17 bike needed to be like this long. On the new bike, it only needs to be this long. Honda took the wiring loom, they folded it into a Z and put three wraps of electrical tape around it. I swear to God, I'll go get one and show it to you.
How much inventory did they have of those things? Did they make a ton of them?
They clearly didn't change the vendor, and they just said, just keep on rolling them out. So they could have saved money on wire,
Sure.
I've seen Honda do dumber things. Aggravating as all get out is the switches on the console in the new bike for fog light and for home link. Those are dummy switches from the factory. Now, in that console, underneath them, the actual functioning electric button wiring and all of that is present. But Honda installed a lockout, a different piece, made another part. Instead of just putting the button there, it could have been there and you move it and nothing happens, right?
Sure.
But so now that if you want to add, now you're after 20, they all came with fog lights, but they don't come with home link.
That's
right.
If
you want to add that,
Got to take the whole damn bike apart.
They have to take the whole bike apart. They have to get the
know.
console off. The console has to be dismantled. And then you take a screw out and pull these the dummy switch out. So Honda actually made two pieces where one, it makes no sense. And now the customer is the only victim here. That was really inconsiderate. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I love the video you did on one of the videos you did on your cable setup. You've got this new cabling thing for the fuel door and the side pocket. I guess I had thought about it. I just never been able to put it into words like you did, how much engineering and trouble they went to prevent somebody from stealing gas. And I thought about that. I thought, that is insane because I've never worried about somebody trying to break into my motorcycle to steal gas.
I mean, are the roving Mad Max gangs of bandits that are siphoning fuel out of them? But wouldn't you just start with a car that holds 20 gallons instead of something that holds 5?
Yeah.
How much do you stand to steal? If it's full, 5 gallons?
Right. What's that going to do for you?
Doesn't make any sense. The one that's in particularly wacky is the side knee pocket one where you get to the second button. That one is actually a micro switch that's wired up to a servo motor, and the servo motor has a cable actuator that goes down in a cable, and literally the button and the door are touching each other, but it's like sending a satellite signal to outer space to come back, to your. It makes no sense, But I'll be honest, that's another one. When you talk about cost and reliability, I don't know of anything that was wrong with the mechanical latches on the 2001 to 17 bike, and the helmet locks on the 2017 to 1 to 17 bike were just perfect. No one ever said, "I wish these were different, relocated better." No one. These were just things that were used billion times in millions of miles by hundreds of thousands of Goldwing owners that no one complained about and no one failed. And now every latch on the motorcycle is, electro and motors and things. And then the double joke is, if your electric system fails, your battery fails, there's still a complete full set of cable operated latches on the motorcycle. They're there anyway. They're there anyway.
They already put the cables in.
What are you doing? So why, if you're going to put cables on the bike, just take 5 pounds off and get the electric latches and servo motors and wires and all that off there too.
Exactly.
And take $300 or something off the cost of the bike. I just think that those unnecessarily complicated things, go for reliability and just
simplicity.
leave a gizmo off when you can. It is a known problem that right knee fuel door will fail to open, and you're going to find that out where. At the gas pump, because you're at a gas pump. I don't think people use that right knee pocket very much, other than to get to their gas pump.
It doesn't hold anything.
And if you open it, whatever's in it falls out anyway.
The only thing it could hold is the smart key, which you don't want to put in there.
But you have a vertical pocket a vertical pocket. So I don't think people use it much, but they do have to get to their fuel door button. So you're not using it often, but when you do, the time you're going to need it, I have pulled up to the gas pump. I am out of gas. I'm in Kalamazoo, and I push the button, and I get my click, and I can't get in there.
With all of your engineering, because you've got quite a setup there with CNC machines and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, and I imagine and I'm guilty of doing this too. It's kind of like owning a pickup truck or a van. And everybody that knows you have a pickup truck or van, people come by and want you to help them move on the weekends. So, since I know you have the CNC machine, I need this little thing made.
Hey, somebody did that to me recently.
I wonder who that was.
Somebody I know. Seems kind of famous. He's got a big talk show.
Oh, is that it? Oh, big talk show. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Cruiseman's Garage or something like that.
That's going to be a huge seller. You just wait and see.
I don't think you're wrong. We'll talk. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I don't think you're wrong. I think it's going to be a great product.
Well, but with all this machinery and experience you've had with Goldwing suspension, do you actually have any contacts at Honda that you deal with? Because I don't have anybody.
Nobody I know I have a lot of kanji characters on my YouTube channel as guests, but no one from Honda has ever contacted me.
Isn't that amazing?
I don't know. You know, I picture the people that design and manufacture those Honda motorcycles as, you know, they're obviously very brilliant, and it's easy to stand back and look at someone else's creation when it's all said and done and find all the flaws in it. And so that's kind of one of my niches, is trying to find the little things and make them better. The truth is, I know just from my experience that manufacturing little tiny things to connect to your Goldwing, how hard that is to do.
Yeah.
Just
right.
How hard it is to do and make it something quality and reliable repeatably, that I don't have warranty problems and issues with. And that's something I take a lot of pride in, is we just don't have, I don't even have a warranty department. You know, it's not even
right.
What we sell goes
issue.
out the door and never comes back. You know, that's important. But to put together an entire motorcycle is beyond my imagination. And I can build a suspension component, engine case.
Yeah.
Just think of that.
And getting all these pieces of plastic to line up just right and snap together.
Transmission shafts that can take 120 foot-pounds of torque with 400 pounds of riders and all of their crap on there, and a trailer, and not just have it explode all the time. I mean, just the bomb-proof nature of their drivetrain is just spectacular. And but to start with a blank piece of paper and go from scratch, people whine and beep about the cost
you could say it.
I whine and bitch. They bitch about the cost.
Yeah.
When I look at when I see for $30,000, they wheel out this magnificent stallion of technology and reliability and power and beauty, and it's a tour de force it's a statement about what's capable in the motorcycle world, and it's $30,000. It should be $300,000. I don't know how they make money for $30,000. I really don't. I couldn't to produce the cylinder heads. I couldn't do it for $30,000. I don't know how. The frame, the casting, the welding. Think about the wiring harness. Just a headlight casing.
Yeah.
You know,
they make all their money on replation parts. Yeah, $2,500 for that headlight.
Yeah, that headlight's a good one. But you know, it's
and the radio.
I just don't know how they put it together the first time for $30,000. It's actually not $30,000. I love when it came out. It was $26,000, and it was immediately rounded up to $30,000. You know, but. You know, it was $500 or $1,000 more than the year before it. It was, you know, the last Goldwings were $25,500.
That to me is not as mysterious as, because it's a brand new design and they're doing it for $30,000. How the hell is the Harley that's been the same bike for 50 years, $50,000? That's what. Yeah. They figured it out.
Way better than the Japanese. I do see guys go down the rabbit hole with those things in a way. Luckily, the Goldwing market has never gone down the engine performance roadway. It truly is more power and more capable than almost anyone will use it for, and particularly within its intended use. Granted, we got the Yellow Wolf type characters, that they're the infamous Yellow Wolf that, you know, can carve the tail of the dragon faster than anybody on a sport bike. You know, there's these anomalies, but that's not the standard user and the standard need, and they're not looking for it to be loud or obnoxious or, and you know, I don't really hear, you know, even people towing trailers. It's just not even a conversation with Goldwingers. But with Harley guys, they'll buy that same motorcycle you just mentioned, pull the engine out and throw it in a trash can, and then load in an S&S, some big S&S motor and a crazy fuel injection system, and you know, they'll take that bike and, you know, massively up the power, but at doubling the cost of the bike just to have, more. I don't know what you do with it, to be honest, but now you have more. When I was working there at Marietta Motorsports, there was a place called Earl Small's Harley here in Atlanta forever. And they didn't have a dyno, and we had a dyno. So these guys would come down from the Harley shop. This is terrible stories, but it happened 100 times. They'd come down after just having their bikes hot rodded up, And I think a stock 1340 Harley made like 53 horsepower,
Right.
So not a significant amount of horsepower, more torque. It's obviously the nature of the engine. But so, the salesman would say, well, you buy these pipes, that's 10 horsepower, and you buy these cams, that's another 12, and you buy this Screaming Eagle coil, that's 3, and you put these wires on. So this guy's adding up all of his horsepower. So he's coming in there going, I'm up to 120 now, I got 120 horsepower. So they put it on the dyno, and they would, by the way, he's in 20 grand into a stock motor, and it makes 63 or 65 horsepower. And they would just look at the graph and the number, and they go, well, what unit is that? It's not horsepower, is it? We're like, that's horsepower, man. You got 1 horsepower per $1,000. That's what you got.
Wow.
I feel bad, but I knew what was going to happen every time after you've seen it enough.
That's funny.
If you're just trying to get a big horsepower number out of a Harley, you're either going to have a blank check or a lot of patience and a lot of time to get there.
Right.
It's just not the nature of that beast. And I don't think it's the nature of the Goldwing, either. Like it's perfect at what it does. It should be a quiet, smooth, elegant, this is, I'll tell you another thing, and this isn't Harley bashing. It's just the facts of my life. When we were first starting to do Goldwings, we actually would travel around a bit. We went to a couple of Daytonas and set up in Daytona. The first year we were down there, we went big again, 10 or 12 guys in a big setup. The first weekend, we maybe did 40 Goldwings or something. Or that Daytona Bike Week, we did about 40 Goldwings. 10 of those guys also owned a Harley Ultra Classic. We talked to 10 different guys. 4 of the guys we did bikes for owned them, and another 6 told us. They're like, I own a Harley Ultra Classic. I ride that around town to be cool with my buddies, but my wife won't go on a trip with me on a Harley. She's just not going to do it. So if I want her to go on vacation with me, I had to buy a Goldwing. So they have a $50,000 Harley and the $30,000 Goldwing. You're going to go touring. You want the smooth, elegant, quiet, peaceful, sophisticated comfort. You're looking for a beautiful, peaceful experience while cruising, not being shook to death and listening to loud mufflers for. You imagine the pipes beating your brains out for 8 hours a day.
I don't know how they do it. I know there's guys that do it. I don't know how they do it.
We really fight a battle with people. Really associates an old school crowd, which Goldwingers are, associate any type of suspension upgrade with racing, or I want performance. I want to go to the tail of the dragon. They go, well, I don't go do that. And that is, you're not what great suspension goes. It's transcendent beyond that. And it is, if you take a stock Goldwing of either of these generations and are one kitted with our suspension, drive it in a straight line down the highway, most people go 6 or 8 hours. They're wiped out on a stock bike. They've had all they can take. They can't wait to get off the bike, to get to the hotel room. They're destroyed, wiped out, fatigued. A bike with our suspension kit on it is the opposite. They can ride longer with greater comfort, less wear and tear on the driver and fatigue. You can get to your hotel, go out for a dinner, and enjoy yourself. And that comes from 1,000 little instances in a day, maybe more, where every time you change lanes and your bike squiggles across the lane seam, and you grip the bars tightly for a moment, and then go back to relaxing. Every time a truck passes you and you start getting buffeted, right? You tense up and grab the thing and lock your shoulders, and you're holding the bars tight because it's just unnerving. And do that over and over and over for 8 hours, and all of a sudden you're fatigued from, just controlling the motorcycle. Instead of like ours, after you kit a bike with ours, I say, when you leave here, I want you to go get on a pavement seam, get on top of it, and tell me you can find it. See if your bike does, and it won't. It just, with a properly suspended bike, you can go on waved pavement, where they've grooved it, or the other one, people don't think about this, but the operator sits right in the middle of the motorcycle. And so while the wheels may be delivering impacts into the chassis, they're isolated from it quite a bit. Your passenger is not. So
Right.
she is over the rear wheel. And so when they take a shock to the shock, sorry to be redundant, a shock to the shock, that is translated straight up their back. So again, we have I have a catalog here in our waiting room that's just, my wife had bad back. She couldn't ride with me anymore. The suspension changed our life. She's able to ride with me, or she had a bad neck. Or it's just the general comfort. So, you cross a railroad track where there's, say, a pothole coming. And I hear this story all the time. The driver is supposed to alert the passenger, hey, you've got a bump, and if you don't,
Right.
and you hit the
Right.
bump, then the next thing you get a smack on the helmet. Hey,
Yep.
you tell me when that's coming. Don't leave me sitting back here and don't warn me. Most Goldwingers do, I believe a great percentage do ride 2-up, and a great percentage of those ride only 2-up. The only time that
Right.
bike comes out of the garage is if the wife's going to get on the back. And so that woman, by the time she's ridden on the back of that bike 20,000 miles, is as intimately familiar with how it feels like and what it acts like, almost as the operator is, as the rider
Right.
is. And so we have a lot of these too. It's one of our favorite tales is, a guy wants to have the suspension upgrade, but he doesn't want to tell his wife because it's obviously very expensive. The older Goldwing's now around $3,500 to get everything we sell for it.
Right.
And so he won't tell her. So he'll just come here and get it done and go home. And the next time they go out, they'll pull out of the garage, go down the driveway, they take the bump off the curb, and they go down to the first stop sign, and they hit the potholes at the stop sign, and the wife comes on the intercom and says, what did you do to this bike?
How much did this cost?
What did you do? Because this is not the same bike that I've been riding on for the 2 or 3 years now.
Right.
So it's, people are concerned. It's like, God, so much money. Am I really going to notice this? And it's not a small thing to really have a really great suspension package on your touring motorcycle. It's a game-changing experience. One that we've actually kind of, it's so easy to, I don't really do the selling anymore, but I got a great sales guy, Dan, who takes care of these things. But the tire wear improves so significantly that we could actually prove to you that in the life of a Goldwing, you could pay for the suspension in
Just
improved
on tires.
And,
Wow.
but never mind that they last longer. They stay smooth while they wear down. So most people will replace tires because they become cupped and are now howl and they're unrideable and they just look unsafe. So
Yeah.
we can you can actually wear a tire down to where its usable life has been consumed, and then you'll change it, but it will still be smooth and usable. You're just changing it because it's time to change it. All of those miles, you're just riding more comfortably. And
Sure.
so I always hate it when the other one we try and talk people out of is, well, I'm just going to wear out the stock suspension some.
Yeah.
You're
I've
really-
been guilty. I've been guilty of saying that too.
You're really not gonna. It's gonna be the same. It's going to be the same next year as it is this year and the year after that. It doesn't really wear out, so to speak, particularly with the shock absorbers, like on the 18 Plus where it's 2 shock absorbers. Conventional telescopic forks do wear faster than a shock for a multitude of reasons. But that's always been one of the more spectacular misses by Honda, is that there is no recommended service interval for the forks on a Honda Goldwing.
It is interesting.
And whereas they want you to change your air filter every 16,000 miles, they won't have you change the oil in the fork, which is literally polluted by 20,000 miles. There's actually another anomaly in the preceding Goldwing. The anti-dive fork, the one on the left, is a known, just horrific, ill-conceived design. All the manufacturers tried it at one time or another on racing bikes or street bikes or touring bikes. They tried some form of anti-dive. They want to hydraulically stop the fork from compressing when you pull the brakes. To do that, it means the fork is now it's hydraulically locked on some level while you're braking, which means every bump you hit while you're doing that, the suspension isn't soaking, and it's just banging into it. So It's an ill-conceived concept, whereas you can achieve that in damping through cartridges, properly damped cartridges. We and the right spring rates. We've proven that. This anti-dive system, down in the bottom of the fork legs, there's 2 holes, one where oil goes in and out of that system, and brand new from the factory, those holes are like cheese grater sharp. And the chrome tube that you see on your motorcycle that pumps in and out of the lower fork leg has a Teflon coated bushing on it. And that thing goes past those 2 cheese holes once or twice as you bottom out once or twice, and it will grind the Teflon right off of a brand new fork, and you don't even know it.
Wow.
Teflon's floating around in there, and it gets stuck in the cartridge, which is very sensitive metering device that you wouldn't like. It'd be like having dirt in a carburetor. You just don't want it. So like from the first 200 miles, you bottom out twice, and now there's Teflon floating around in the fork. The bushing's missing some of its coating. Those forks were underbuilt for that bike. The forks and triple clamp are not meaty enough. You need like landing gear, and they're spindlier. And so those bushings, as they slide up and down, the Teflon wears off of them naturally. And we find that lower bushing is worn in 20,000 miles, 25,000
Really?
tops.
Wow.
So the service interval, as far as we're concerned, is 25,000 miles. Now, if you ride past that, all the Teflon's worn off, that loosens that bushing, and the fork tube now has more play in the lower leg. And now, since the Teflon's missing, it will start rubbing and wearing the inside of the fork leg into a barrel. Now it gets looser and looser, and now your seals will start to leak because you're beating on the seals. So a guy will go, I went 80,000 miles and my fork seals started leaking. I changed my fork seals. Now they're leaking again in 10,000 miles.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Well, because now the fork leg is barreled out. So it's a question of wear stacking up, because Honda doesn't have a service interval on that. And all that while, that oil degrades in the fork, and it just gets worse and worse until, we open it up. It's like a fish oil. We've had it to where we have to clear out the shop. It stinks so bad. And we have fans and exhaust fans to pull all that out. But it's usually a Goldwing that'll get us like that, or some other sport touring bikes like FZ01s.
It seems like this would be even more multiplied if you have a trike. Thanks again for joining Garage Talk, the podcast for motorcycle enthusiasts. Garage Talk is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and CastBox. In part 2, we're going to talk about how suspension affects your trike, how Honda seems to be ignoring our eating habits in America. We're going to talk about belly pans and engine guards, and you're even going to get a sneak peek into a brand new Traxxion product coming soon. This is the first place you're going to hear about it, is in part 2 of this video, and I even played a hand in the development.